Can everybody hear me? My voice carries okay? Well, thank you, John, President Bramley, 20-plus year friend of mine. And let me welcome all of you as an official of Vermont's administration. Let me welcome all of you who don't otherwise come from Vermont to Vermont. It's a glorious day out there. It's like that almost every day, except yesterday. So I'm really pleased to be here, and I think this is an incredibly exciting opportunity. Provost Nadell, President Bramley, the staff, and folks who have put this on, this is an opportunity. And let me say, from Vermont's standpoint, where better to have this conversation, this kind of conversation kick off, but here in Vermont at the University of Vermont. So thank you all for coming. So, a few remarks. I believe the time is now to start challenging the status quo that we have been dealing with for the last 5 decades. There was a time when big ruled, where we had big cars, I had big hair, and we have big companies. And I would suggest, whether Americans know it or not, we have given our choice away to those big companies as to the kind of food we want to choose to eat. And I would suggest some of people would say we're actually having the big companies determine what we eat. I'm here to say that Bob Dylan had it right, that here in Vermont, times are a-changing. Today, I believe, as a culture, we are realizing some of the biggest ideas are actually small. Local foods, local economies, small farms, community-based agriculture. In my view, the big status quo is being forced to reckon with the big, small force of small ag, of community-based ag, of local economies, and our local cultures. It's challenging the status quo of the last 50 years. It's starting to shift. Our consumer voices, your voices, are being raised in requesting new products and new food culture that is connected to the land, connected to people, and connected to your health. Today, as an example, we are seeing Vermont tomatoes, raised in Vermont, feeding our neighbors. We're seeing those same tomatoes competing in the global marketplace from Boston to Washington successfully every day. Our local farms can do the job. I believe our voices, your voices, really matter. We have more opportunities to share our opinions, to engage one another than we've ever had before. The democratization of the media and our information technologies are happening. And let me ask you, how many of you today can put your hand on a smartphone right now? How many of you can put your hand on a smartphone right now? How many of you could do this 15 years ago? A smartphone, not just a cell phone, a smartphone that can read things on a label. That is part of the change. This device was the tool of the Arab Spring, when people found a new voice. I believe it's the tool of the 21st century for the food systems that we envision, because they empower us, the consumers, in ways we've never been empowered before. I believe we consumers are interested in, when we look at food, we want to know what we're buying, we want to know how it's produced, we want to know where it comes from, and we want to know who's doing the producing. This device is going to help us understand that all the better. So entrepreneurs and consumers are finding new ways to build markets, to finance new food ventures, and to make sales and purchases that are changing the face of our food system, and that is a good thing. Let me tell you, I love being the Secretary of Agriculture in Vermont. And let me tell you why. because all of us in Vermont are doing some really big things. We're now the healthiest, or some would debate, among the healthiest states in the country. We helped start the organic industry. We are leading the country in direct sales between farmers and consumers who are farmers markets, or CSAs. Our education system, we lead the country in farm-to-school programs. People look to the state of Vermont. We have close ties between our food system and our education system at the higher education level. I can tell you, it is a conversation that is happening, and action is happening at the higher education level in this state. By the way, today's summit here at UVM is an example of that. Our largest hospital and healthcare system, just located across the way here, is leading the nation in its local food utilization. And the patients and the staff love it. In fact, people go to the hospital now for lunch. I mean, they choose to do that. So in Vermont, we are removing some of the socioeconomic barriers to local healthy foods. We are utilizing EBTs at the farmers markets. Our Department of Health is utilizing and implementing a healthy retailer initiative where we bring healthy local foods to the convenience stores. We are pushing the farm to institution concept and the connections, where now the state of Vermont actually hosts CSA pickups in our state buildings. Fletcher Allen, as I mentioned, is serving 2 million meals a day using locally, or that's not a day, a year, usually using locally sourced foods. And UVM and the Sodexo Food Service have accepted the Real Food Challenge. Our agriculture in the state of Vermont is diversifying. We are a dairy state, and dairy is diversifying. We have had in the last 2 years a record growth in the number of on-farm milk processing permits in the state of Vermont. Those typically are cheese, yogurt, and ice cream makers on the farm, on the dairy farm. Record numbers in the state of Vermont. We have an artisanal cheese industry in the state, the greatest on a per capita basis, and the reason why Vermont is one of the top 3 artisanal cheese regions in the world. We are seeing an influx of young people into agriculture like we've never seen before. We're seeing increases in our beef production, our meat production, vegetables, wide range of products, including emu skincare products, in case you're interested. But those days ahead of us are not without challenges. And we need to recognize those challenges. And those are some of the things we all in this room need to grapple with. Food access. We have food deserts in this state and in this country. We have significant socioeconomic barriers for some people to access the kind of food in the food system I'm talking about. We have labor issues where we're seeing increasing dependence upon migrant laborers without an adequate national policy that allows them to work openly and legally and enables us to treat them humanely as they deserve. We have a real lack of agricultural literacy, and President Bramley mentioned that. It shows up in our attitudes to our food. It shows up in our ignorance on how things are produced and raised, and how our food systems operate. Fast food, too much of it. We know it, but we still eat it. We still consume it. And in fact, over the last 50 years, the amount of time we've spent preparing our foods has declined by 40%. That is losing our literacy with food. We know we have environmental issues, that the agriculture and food systems upon which we depend can and do impact the environment, and we need to be honest about that, and we need to address that. And we must continue to push for sustainable farm practices. We need to continually innovate implement those practices, those new practices that enable farmers to make a living while producing the food and the products that are good to eat and are good for the environment. So, here we are today. I ask you to listen, I ask you to learn, I ask you to reinvest your commitment to changing our agriculture and food systems so they will meet the needs of the 21st century, the century of our children and the century of our grandchildren. Thank you, good luck, and work hard.